Hello, this is Aaron Wissner from Local Future. I'm going to try that again. Hello, this is Aaron Wissner from Local Future, and I'm here with Rae. Rae is in New Mexico. How are you doing, Rae?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing pretty well given the circumstances of May 2020, the 7th of May 2020.
Personal or world circumstances?
Well, world circumstances, yes, because there's all these things going on right now, and people are, you know, concerned about what's going on, and I'm concerned about how the people are doing, especially.
Like how people also is a lot of your concern, like how are people going to react to not having life as they're used to having it?
My number one concern is I think the people who are in uh, really, really impoverished situations anywhere in the world. I mean, of course, I
Yeah.
have a great concern for animals as well. I have concern for anybody who is suffering or near suffering because of what is happening or soon to happen.
Yeah.
One of my biggest concerns is the people like the poorest farmers in Yemen and India, the workers, not even the farmers, like the ones that they don't have land, they don't have anything. Um, those in Bangladesh, those in Eastern um, Africa, those in the Middle East and Syria. I mean, that's actually my number one concern.
I think that like the saddest part of it is, or the most unfair part, is that the majority of those people were not the ones who created the situation. They're just victims of the situation.
Yes, you've read some of Daniel Quinn's works,
Oh,
is that
yeah.
correct?
Oh, yeah. Like Ishmael and
Yes. So, I mean, from my perspective, I feel like it's from that perspective, I should say, it's the fault of our belief in the story.
yep.
Mother culture has taught us the story of, ownership and property, and that this is the only way
Hmm.
it can be, and there's no other way it can be, and there's nothing better than this.
Hmm. And within like the Daniel Quinn writings, he talks about the takers and the leavers,
Exactly.
so I feel like the people who you sound like you're most concerned about are the leavers, not the takers.
Well, I think they would leave if they could, but there's
There's
there's no land, there's nowhere. I mean, it's not like,
nowhere for them.
right, it's not like they can go out and just become the uncontacted or become
Yeah.
the native, because the land is all taken up and they'll be pushed off it if they try to go on it. So, yeah. But shall we get to?
I mean, in this time, I think a lot about other species, not just the ones who are victims of what's going on environmentally and what we've done to the planet, like that for sure, but also those who I see who aren't even aware that it's going on. Humans are, let's say we didn't have social media and we didn't have TV news or whatever, there would be tribes in different places, even of humans, who wouldn't even know that this is all happening because they're not part of that world. And so in a way, it's kind of comforting. I spend at least 3 hours a day in the national forest, and I'm around mostly wild nature in that and not human created constructs. And when I'm there, it's like, okay, this thing exists that's going on in the world right now, but not right now, like not in my here and now when I'm there. So it's just like these, for the moment anyway, I am just like these other species who are just living their lives. But, you know, we're an unusual species. We're, I'm putting it politely. We're tough. We're really tough. We have a lot of stories rolling. You know, we have a lot of fear. And the fear makes us do what I think is the opposite of what a species, a healthy species would do in a time of crisis. You know, like JC and I were in the Baja this winter, and when we were on our way back, we didn't really know what was building here this spring, like what was happening with the virus and people's reactions. And we were on our way back, and a friend said, "You should bring toilet paper back from Mexico." And I said, "What? Toilet paper?" I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "The shelves are empty." And then she sent me a photo from one of the big stores of the empty shelves. And I thought, really? In a time of crisis, this is what we do? You know, not only like why toilet paper, but also why hoarding instead of sharing? Like, it seems like a perfect time to say, oh, I have more than I need, let me share that, rather than let me get what I can get while the getting's good. You know, that was people's first reaction was, oh my God, let me get what I can get while the getting's good. And
isn't this the overall belief of the taker, ownership, possession philosophy, though, that we need to store things up, we need to get things, and we need to have things that we can call ours? It's mine.
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 Yeah, it's also an ego thing, because that mine, like this is mine, also translates into other aspects of how we react in the world. Because when our ego says, oh, this is mine, then it's also like anybody in our world, you know, our kids, our parents, they're all a reflection of us. These are mine. You know, it's just like, it's pretty toxic thinking, the whole mine thinking. And, you know, we grew up with it. We grew up with that, like, oh, I want to own property and I want to have things because that'll make me secure. And if I have money in the bank, that'll make me secure. And it's the story. And people who don't have that story, it gets pretty interesting. I used to go in and volunteer with these developmentally disabled people who were in a factory, and they were working in the factory and building things and, you know, working on all kinds of projects and getting paid very, very little. There were no windows in this factory. So I went into that place one day and talked to the manager, and I said, look, I would like to take the people from the factory one day a week out hiking, get them out of the factory, but I'd like them to get paid for that day. I'll come every Wednesday if that's a good day, and we'll go hiking. And he finally agreed to it. I'm not sure why he agreed to it, but he did, you know. So
you can be very convincing when you want to be.
Yes, when I want to be. So I took these people out hiking, and I learned so much from them, because they didn't have a mind that held on to these stories that we grew up with. And one day we were like on a bridge above this land, and a river was going through, and there was a surveyor down below, and the surveyor was, you know, doing his surveying job. And one of the women, I'll kind of imitate her voice, what is that man doing? And I said, he's a surveyor. What's a surveyor? And I said, that is somebody who measures where one piece of land ends and another one begins. And then she looked really puzzled, and she said, land doesn't end. And it just blew me away. I said, you're right. Land doesn't end. So I have no idea what that man is doing. That's what I told her. But it really stuck with me, because we have this idea. Yes, my land goes from here to here. I own this land. It goes from here to here, and then you own this land. And if you were lucky enough to have good education in whatever family you were born into, you're going to have more stuff. You're going to have more land. You're going to have more possessions. You're not a better person. You just have more shit, you know? And And that stuff, am I allowed to say that on your
Yes,
interview?
absolutely.
Oh, good. Well, that'll just open a door to all kinds of things I might
You
say.
can say anything you want because, you know, I can say, you know, validly that, you know, this is not my speech, this is your speech. So I'm just sharing the conversation I had with you.
Oh, this is us. Let's
Yeah.
call it ours, because it's not mine, 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 mine. Anyway,
So,
I think that all these different stories, to be, a good person, what does that mean? What did we grow up with? We grew up with these stories that we took in about, oh, what is success? What is wealth? And I really love the idea, and I've been doing it for years, of just like getting mindful and redefining what wealth is, because it's very easy to get caught up in what is success, what is wealth. You can get swirled up in that human world and forget what a really wealthy life is, which is unrelated to those numbers in your bank account. That does not create a wealthy, rich life. So it really takes like stopping, because it's easy to get caught up in that.
so if wealth is not the number, there used to be these commercials on TV that were, what is your number? What is your number? And it would show these various professional looking young people, and they would have like this little bar that would come up, and it would have like this little number at the top.
Was it the happiness number?
No, it was how much money, you know, their financial assets. And so, Rae, if that's not what what's valuable, then what is valuable?
Okay, I'll tell you, of course, this is just my opinion and perspective.
Sure, but
It,
you're a person of deep thoughts, and a person that, you know, you might want to just introduce yourself just a little bit. I mean, what is your background, if you could just in 1 minute or 2 minutes kind of describe?
okay, but then we have to go back to the wealth question,
Yes,
okay?
absolutely.
Because I am like one of the wealthiest people in the world in my definition of wealth,
Okay.
okay? So my name's Rae Sikora, and let's see, my life has been about, from years ago, looking at what was right in front of me, and just right in front of me. I'm not a great planner. And looking at, oh, how do I do the most good and the least harm in the world? I don't know where that came from. I mean, I have a family that firmly believes in social justice. It did not extend to animals. Mine extends to all life. And it started when I was very young, and I think my life really took a turn when I was 15, and I considered myself like total animal lover. And I was like even known by a lot of people in our community as the animal person. I would rescue animals and, stitch them up with dental floss, wild animals, re-release them into the wild. I was, the person you call if you have a snapping turtle in your driveway and you want to back out. I was that person, the animal person. And then I walked into a leather shop with a friend after I had just downed 2 hot dogs, like really vacuumed them. And we walked into the leather shop, and there were some skins that were hanging in there. And I said to my friend, hey, Deb, don't buy anything in here. It's dead animals. And the woman behind the counter, she wasn't mean. She asked me one question that, your life can get really steered in a whole different course sometimes. This one question was, do you eat meat? And I was 15, and my little brain was like, like, what does that have to do with dead animals? First thought in my mind. And then I got it. Light bulb went on, and I turned to the woman behind the counter. I said, I don't eat meat. And my friend looked at me like, liar. She'd just seen me eat the 2 hot dogs. And we left there, and she said, why did you lie to her? And I said, I didn't lie. I never thought about it. I will never touch meat again. And I didn't know the word vegetarian. That's how long ago this was. Like, that was not a common word in our culture. And I didn't know what to call myself, but I knew I wasn't going to eat animals. And then 5 years later, when I saw firsthand what was going on a dairy farm, I thought, I have got to check out everything. I've got to start investigating every industry that I'm supporting. And if I don't believe in the imprisonment of the beings, in the death, the suffering, any of it, I can't support it. And it changed my life. And then it became my work. I never thought it would be my work. Okay, so that is 45 years ago. That's a long time. And it's been my work ever since, is basically just to help people align their core caring values with their choices. Because I think we're really used to like saying these words like, oh, it's Earth Day, or, oh, it's Be Kind to Animals Week. The words don't mean anything. What does it look like in your life? What are your daily choices? And do they support your values or don't they support your values? Because a lot of us are used to saying words or identifying as something, but a lot of people really struggle with having their daily choices really reflect their values. So I always feel like I'm that facilitator. I can help people align their deepest core values with their choices. And so that's been my work for all these decades. Lucky me, right? But that's my work. It's been great.
How have you been able to afford that? How have you
That's
been
what I
able
was
to
gonna
make a living?
That's what I was going to say.
Where have you getting your food? Do you have or do you live like in a apple orchard or something?
Okay, doesn't it segue perfectly into wealth?
Yes.
Going back to the wealth question. So, I have had to, redefine wealth. If somebody looked at my bank account, which, one time my father did, he's like, I don't understand how you're living on so little, because a lot of the work that I do is volunteer. I've never made like a huge salary, but I've really gotten to do more than everything I wanted to do. And I was living in this house, Aaron, it was like a castle. And this woman who was willing to rent to me and my 3 big dogs, she said, come stay in the house. I'm not sure if we're going to rent to you. Very wealthy family in Western Mass. And when I was there were some things that were broken in the house. She said, stay for 3 days and we'll decide. We'll talk about it. She never told me what the rent was. And I thought, I can't afford this rent. But whatever, I get a 3-day vacation in this beautiful house in the Berkshires. And I was skiing and it was wonderful. And then when I was in the house, I was like, oh, the washing machine's broken. I fixed it. So I just fixed whatever was broken in the house, not even thinking she would know that I had fixed the things in the house. But she did. She started noticing, oh, she fixed this. She fixed this. She fixed this. And then when we were talking about rent, I said, look, there's very little chance I can afford to rent your house. This is like beyond any place I've ever lived. And when she told me the rent, she said, $250. I said, a day? And she said, no, a month. And I said, 250 a month to live here, on thousands of acres of beautiful land and a pond for swimming. She said, yeah. She said, I just think you're good for the place. So those kinds of little, sort of unexpected, and you could almost think of them as like magical things happen. I don't think of them as magical. I remember this point when I started doing this work where I said, all right, universe, or whoever is controlling this puppet show, if you want me to continue this work, just make sure I'm healthy, I have a roof over my head, and, I'm comfortable. I have great food in the fridge. That's all I need. I don't need a lot more. And as long as I have that, I will continue to do this work. I don't know who I was talking to. I'm not really a religious person, so I don't know what the greater force is that controls things. My religion is called I don't know. So so I don't know what those forces are, but from the moment I did that, I've had it. I've always had a beautiful place to be, healthy, and great food to eat. So that would be like base wealth. if we were talking about like what is wealthy, what's success, what's a rich life, you're
So the
healthy.
basic
Yep.
essential needs.
Yes, exactly. So now, this is why I said I think I'm one of the wealthiest people in the world, because I have more than that. I have so much more than that. I have beautiful community. I have friends and family who I get along with, who I love, and they love me. And I have very little stress in my life. I have tools to deal with whatever comes along. Those tools are so valuable. You know, like during this whole coronavirus thing, like I haven't even had a second of fear or this shouldn't be happening, you know, none of that, because I have tools that help me not get caught up too much in that whole human spin.
Do you not
And
fear illness or death or illness of those you love? Then why not?
well, they're all going to die eventually. It's just a matter of time. Um, no, I don't fear that. I would rather that they didn't suffer. You know, that would be great if they didn't suffer. I don't fear their death. Whenever it comes, I hope it's really quick, including mine. Like, you know, I'm.
Are you going to
This
die in a
might
skydiving accident? Jump out of the
probably.
plane
That's
without
what
a
we talk
chute?
about. Like, dang, parachute didn't open. I have to keep pulling on that thing. You know, yeah. I'm not worried about it. I don't live a lot in the future or in the past, you know, so I'm pretty like right here. I mean, it can drive people nuts because it means, you know, I'm not very sentimental. Like, oh, I forget my own birthday, you know, and like JC and I got married on 8808 so that we would be able to remember it, because neither of us is extremely sentimental. And we've forgotten our anniversary some years. We're like, oh, it was our anniversary last month, you know. So luckily it doesn't drive my partner crazy that I'm not so sentimental or past oriented or future oriented.
Is that a tool and a strategy?
It's a
Like,
tool for sure. It's a
like for
tool
others, I wonder. Could it be for others?
for sure, for sure. You know, because all we really have, we can't control the past. We know that. It's done. And the future, we have an illusion that we can control it. We think we can control it, but we can't. You know, we can use our will on some level to kind of co-create what we hope for in the world, but we don't get to choose where it's going. We don't get to decide, you know, in the final outcome, what our actions turn into. And so, you know, for me, it's more, oh, what's the most loving thing I can do right now in this moment? You know, and it mostly serves me well. It probably doesn't serve me well if I'm one of the people who's like thinking about things like retirement, you know, like people who think about those. Then it probably doesn't serve me well. In fact, it was funny because recently my father said, you know, you're not going to get as much inheritance as your brother and sister, just so you know. And I said, oh, how did you determine that? I wasn't upset about it. I don't care. He doesn't have to leave me anything. And I said, how did you determine that? He said, well, if I give it to you, you'll give it all away. And I said, but wouldn't that be great? You know, I'd be giving it to these like wonderful, life affirming choices on the earth. He says, yeah, right. Like I said, you're not going to get as much as your brother and sister, you know. So, and I think he was like kind of half joking, but I think he was serious too, you know, about it. Like, my God, you just give it away. I only give it away if I don't need it. You know, I keep what I need for myself, and what I call a need, you know, like there's this on the back of my, I guess you call it a business card. I don't think of myself as being in business. What's another word for a business card? Like introduction
Cards?
card.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh good. I love
My
that. Oh,
card.
intro. My card. On the back of my card, there's questions to ask before you spend money. And the first question is it a want or a need? And like, quite honestly, I forget to ask myself that sometimes. And probably all of us do, who are certainly in this more privileged world of like people who can go, oh, I need that, I'll just go online and order it. That's a very privileged position to be in, you know, compared to the people you're talking about who, you know, they're like, whatever, maybe they're out in the desert and they're like trying to just sustain themselves and their family. You know, when we're talking about that, then that is like basic needs. What I have is so beyond basic needs. You know, I'm very spoiled, but I still forget. I don't question sometimes, and I'm like, I just want this. You know, are you ever like that? Like, I want this. I don't need it, but I want it.
See all these books back here? Do I really need them? How many can I read at one time? Why do I have a library of this stuff when a lot of it has information which I think is important for other people to know, and yet here it is here instead. So
gathering dust on your
yes, I am one of the many squirrels, the squirrel people, maybe. You know, I store stuff up.
Your tribe is the squirrel people.
I store stuff up for the future. I mean, it's hard to come to grips, I think, with the desire to be a giver, but knowing that I'm not, that I'm a taker, you know, that I'm an owner of everything around me.
But you're not only that, Aaron. You're also a giver. You know, like, you're not saying, hey, Rae, I'm going to interview you and this is how much you're going to pay me per hour.
Oh, sure.
You know, you're both.
Yes. It's weird to be on the edge, though. It's like the edge effect, that you're trying to mentally be in one world, but you're physically in another. And then there's these folks we're talking about who have nothing at all, you know.
Yeah.
In fact, they only have maybe a week or a day or a month of life left because they have no access to food. And we have so much, and it makes me sad that this is the place that we have found ourselves as a global civilization at this point in time, 2020, May the 7th, that there's, you know, people that are millionaires, there's people that are billionaires, and then there are people who may starve to death next week or the following week because they have nothing at all.
I know, that's why I'm saying our species, we're just so weird. I don't get our species at all. You know, I get other species on every level. I get other species. But ours, it was like the toilet paper thing I told you. I was shocked to hear, oh, people are doing that. I'd be like, I'd set up a booth outside my house with free toilet paper if that was really an issue. You know, like, I couldn't believe that people were doing that they were saying, oh my God, let me just take care of me. Not, I just think it's very indicative of what our species has evolved into. You know, it's not a healthy tribe. If our tribe is healthy, we're all healthy. And instead it's, how can I take care of me? So we're back to that again. But it says a lot about, I mean, we're kind of mutants as a species. You know, other species are definitely, okay, I get it that everybody's somebody's lunch and you have animals who are eating other animals and all that. But they're eating to live. They're not eating those other animals because they want to own them. You know, it's very different and not in excess. And it's almost like humans have said, oh, the laws of nature don't apply to us. Different laws of nature, like carrying capacity. And all kinds of things. Like a wolf will not reproduce unless they have 44 miles of uninterrupted, by human activity, uninterrupted space. I don't know how a scientist came up with the 44 miles,
Like
but
44 square miles of territory?
yes, 44 square miles of uninterrupted by human activity
Is
space.
this per wolf
About
or
that.
per pack?
That is a very good question. I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
But either way,
Yes.
they're thinking about it. They're thinking, I don't know if they're thinking about it or if it's just innate or what it is. We're clueless about what other animals are thinking for the most part. But the laws of nature seem to apply to everyone but us. And I don't know if this is going to sound callous, it might, but in a way, I'm relieved that the virus has come along, because I knew that something like it would. I knew that there was something that would speak to us, that would somehow get our attention and say, you are not above the laws of nature. And I think this is one of those things that's saying, you don't have control over this one, people. And there's probably a lot of gifts in this time that we don't even realize yet that are going to come in terms of our evolution, in terms of our growth. And some people are going to take advantage of this time, and they are already. We know who they are.
All the ones that have agendas seem to be trying to take advantage of this time. All the ones who've been trying to push something to try to get something to happen, like every single lobbyist that has being paid to make something happen. They're like the I don't know what sort of animal it is, but they're like jumping on this all at once.
Oh yeah. And it's what it is like opportunists who are saying, oh, everybody's vulnerable right now. How can I take advantage of that? And I think right now I'm fascinated by it. There's my degree's in cultural anthropology. And so there's this, I'm like curious Georgette when it comes to humans and what they do and how they respond to things. And so I'm really watching the humans right now. And I find it fascinating to see people I never imagined would respond in the way that they are responding, in both a positive and a negative way. People who have done things that shocked me, like somebody else was living on their land and they got nervous about there being another human around, and they booted this person who had nowhere else to live off their land. And I was shocked. I'm like, really? Who does that? Like, who would do that? So there's people who are responding with the biggest fear. And then you have other people who are responding with, what can I do to help? So we have a young woman here who's like a daughter to us. We call her our daughter, but she's not like a blood daughter. And she's an ICU nurse. So we have very few cases of the virus here in New Mexico. And there weren't many at her hospital. She just packed up a few weeks ago and she went to New York to work where she was needed. Like, who does that? I already knew that was her personality, was how can I serve? So you have those, how can I serve people? And then you have the, I better protect me. And that's the more fear-based stuff. So it's bringing out people's personalities that kind of look like with a magnifying glass, like, oh, okay. That was a little piece of your personality. Now we're seeing it big, whether it's to serve or to hoard or whatever it is. It's pretty fascinating to watch for the cultural anthropologist in me.
This makes me think of the concept of invitingness, and there are those that are unintentionally inviting, and there's those that have to be intentional about being inviting. And there's also those that are not inviting, and sometimes they're unintentional about it. And sometimes they're uninviting because they're quite intentional about it. And I think the idea that people can make a choice on whether to be inviting or not, giving or not, reaching out or not, and that's really what's
Mm.
being called for right now, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
When people ask me, when I try to think about what would I hope people are doing, I hope they are reaching out to their neighbors, perhaps not physically, but talking with them, calling them, emailing them, waving to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if we're 10 or 20 feet apart outside, chatting with them, and across, you know, across the internet as well, and also putting their gardens in.
Oh, for sure. For sure. You know, it's, I don't know. I just think you're always going to have both. You're going to have both sides of the coin in any situation with any species. You're going to have the ones who are like, how can I help? You know, and do it from their hearts and so sincere, not because they want the community to think that they're such an amazing person, but just because that's what they feel good doing. So you're going to have those people, and then you're going to have the ones who aren't like that.
Aren't humans, from a cultural anthropologist perspective,
Mm-hmm.
do you think the human species is more selfish, more altruistic? Is it both? And if so, what's the interplay?
I'm going to say selfish.
I would agree
For
that
the
this
most part,
culture
so.
is selfish, but if you think of before this culture, outside of the civilization, the Native American peoples, the people our ancestors
Oh,
were before they became part of civilization, you know, the givers on the outside of this line
I
that
think
we're
we
in.
evolved selfish. Yes,
Okay.
we devolved into selfish, I think.
Hmm.
Because it really was true. Like say, when it was native, more tribal cultures, the health of, I think that they saw more of the health of the entire tribe, or saw themselves more as an organism that should be healthy rather than an individual who should win. And so I think we devolved into that, into more of the selfish. And maybe we all have it. Like, it's really good to look at, oh, what is my motivation for doing XYZ, whatever it is? What's my motivation? Is it selfish or is it altruistic? You know, so, okay, I'll give you an example. Right now, like, there's a group of us who are cooking meals for the homeless. And it's challenging. We're cooking vegan meals. That part isn't challenging. That's what we do. The challenging part is it can't be in big pots. It has to be individual servings, frozen and labeled with ingredients. There are 350 people who we're feeding, da 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 da. So I do it even though cooking isn't my favorite thing. So if I look at what is my intention in doing it, what's my motivation in doing it, I can pretty much guarantee you that other people look at it as like, oh, she's so altruistic. You know, it's not my motivation. It's selfish. If I keep going back in it, like, so my number one motivation why I said, yes, I'll help with this, is that I want those people eating vegan food. It's my agenda. You know, like, I have that agenda. Then if I look at that agenda deeper, oh, I want them eating vegan food. I want everybody to realize vegan food is delicious. They don't ever have to eat animal products again. Why do I want that? Oh, because I want the world to quit consuming other species. Oh, what's the end result of that? Well, it's great for the other species, but it sure makes me a whole lot more comfortable in the world. So I could look at it either way. You know, it's a little bit selfish. Like, the less suffering there is in the world, the less suffering I have. You know, so it is a little bit selfish too. You know, it's not just altruistic, like, you know, oh, I want to help these homeless people eat. It's not like that. You know, it's much more complex than that in what my motivations are, you know, and even in the work that I do, you know, I can't control what the world does. I can't control, you know, what people eat, where, experiment on, all that. But I keep doing this work. I just keep on doing it, you know, and I keep wanting to invite people to this possibility. Why? Well, because I'd be a whole lot happier in a nonviolent world, you know. But also I think about the animals too. You know, I don't want there to be unnecessary suffering. So it's both. It's really a little bit of everything, but it's not strictly altruistic. I can't really think of it like that. Does that make sense?
It puts it in an interesting perspective for me, because I've been thinking of it more as, you know, when you have your other needs met, like in Maslow's list. So when you have your other needs met, then it's possible to be altruistic, and that's the natural state of humans. But you're also pointing out that altruism is also self-serving in some ways. You know, I try to think about what is our genetic heritage ever since we became a social animal or a tribal animal rather than a solitary animal. And I don't know that there are really a whole lot of solitary animals, but there do seem to be ones that they only really come together to mate, and that's pretty much it. And I don't know if that's because that's a successful evolutionary trait for them. I mean, I think of this more as certain carnivores, not all carnivores, but maybe certain carnivores. But on the other hand, it seems like animals are really, to a greater extent, social. I mean, flocks of birds and schools of fish and herds of deer and you know, troops of gorillas. The social is the way that a species is successful. So I'm not, it's not popping to mind at the moment, you know, what species is really selfish at its core versus altruistic at its core. And just being a mother, a woman, a parent, is it selfish for a mother to feed her child, or is that altruistic? And if it wasn't altruism that was baked into our genes, then would we even be here? Because would mothers feed their children and take care of, especially humans, take care of them for 5, 10, 15 years until they can go out on their own?
Don't you think that's another case of it being both? You know, like I want this child to thrive. There's the altruistic part. And I don't want to have to suffer through losing that child or have that child be sick. That's the selfish part. You know, I want them to do. But okay, how did
this
you
feels like the Buddhist perspective that life is suffering, and so we're altruistic in order to avoid the suffering.
I think that's part of it. I think that's a big part of it. There's also a pleasure that comes from altruism, which is another selfish thing, you see? Like, oh, I get so much pleasure, you know, handing off hundreds of frozen meals. You know, I'm like, oh, you know, there's like this altruistic part to it and pleasure part of serving and volunteering. There are definitely people in the culture who don't know that pleasure. You know, so when you're talking about like once people have their needs met, that's when they're at liberty to be more altruistic. But we know many, many people who have all their needs met who don't have an ounce of altruism in them.
I don't know if they don't have it, but they don't seem to be expressing it.
They don't live it. Yeah, they don't live it, for sure. For sure. It's probably in there somewhere, buried.
I think of historical figures when thinking about these things as well, like MLK Jr. or Gandhi or Jesus. And those are the ones I'm most familiar with, so I lift their names up. I'm sure other cultures would have lots of other names, but it makes me wonder, to what extent were they selfish to be altruistic, that they were avoiding suffering in order, but they came out as an altruistic. I mean, love is a real chemical thing, right? So, and compassion is a feature of love. So, I know there's no way to separate these things in our minds, that you can't separate suffering chemicals from happiness chemicals, satisfaction, pleasure, whatever neurochemists would call them.
We don't have the answer to this one,
No.
but fun to talk about. I don't usually chat with people about altruism. That's nice. Nice to have a chat with you about it.
Well, this is one of the things that I'm wondering. I'm wondering at what our future is as a global people. And I'm wondering if we are headed towards a more egalitarian culture again, or if we're headed away from it. We already have this very obvious income inequality, where we have people who are going to die in a month or 3 months because of a lack of food. And then we have millionaires who have enough food in their house already that they realistically would never have to leave their house again for the rest of their life. But there's enough food for everybody, especially if, and I know some viewers might be like, especially if the food that was going to feed the factory farmed animals was instead allowed to be given to the people instead. Of course, there's the
Listen, any viewers who would go like that don't understand basic concepts of eating lower on the food chain. It's science. It's not like some wacky philosophical thing. It's just science.
It takes a lot of food calories of plant food to create 1 food calorie of animal food. And there's like scientific ratios. It's like takes to create 1 calorie of chicken muscle, it takes, like 5 calories of corn.
Exactly.
So
anybody who's going, no, don't start talking about that philosophy, just, isn't interested necessarily in science or facts.
And then the other thing is that, monocultures are not the most productive. When you look across decades, you can't monoculture for decades for a couple reasons. Number one is because you're degrading the soil so badly. Number two, because you have to add all these chemicals and fertilizers and pesticides. Number three, just to be able to do a monoculture, you have to use so much oil and energy that even though it seems more productive, you're putting so much more energy into it than you're getting out, as compared to having, like planting a pear tree or an apple tree, where as long as it's in a place where it has some nice soil and some water and a good climate, you're going to have great abundance. And, sure, you might want to tend that tree, and you might want to make sure that, after it's 20 or 30 years old, that there's some little smaller ones growing next to it, because trees don't live forever. But like the whole idea of multi-tier gardens, where you have trees and shrubs and ground cover, and they're all growing food. So you've got peas growing, and you've got potatoes growing, and you've got the apples growing. And I mean, so those two things, just getting rid of animal ag huge abundance of food suddenly, and then switching from industrial ag to natural food growing, permaculture, whatever you want to call it. So there's plenty of food. And then the question is, how do we make sure that the 3-year-old who is starving in Yemen, in Western Yemen right now, has as much food as they need, just like the millionaire has as much as food as they need. Not more than they need, but as
or
much
like
as they need.
me. Oh, I have a lot of food. I'm no millionaire, but wow, we have such abundance of food. And I'm grateful for it all the time. I wish I had a quick way I could distribute it to those people in Yemen. I don't. I distribute it locally. Hey, people, come get arugula. I'm overrun with arugula. Or, we have this, the young woman I was telling you about who's doing nursing in New York now, she and I have an ad on Craigslist and Free Cycle, and we call ourselves 2 Women in a Ladder. And we will go, there's always too much fruit in Santa Fe when all the fruit trees start coming in. And so we go and we say, okay, we will pick your fruit if you don't have time or you're not physically able. You get half of everything we pick. We get half of what we pick, but we can only eat and process so much. So I'm telling you, within like a couple of weeks of each fruit coming in, plums and then pears and then apricots and then peaches, they're all coming in. We have more than we can handle, and then we have to distribute it locally to people who have none. And so it's much easier to do on a local scale than a global scale. I don't know how to do it on a global scale, but it's really fun on a local level to, all this free food. It's just everywhere. It's great. But it's a distribution issue, I think, almost more than anything. But reality is, we do have social media and we do know what's going on globally. But if you didn't have social media or news networks giving you the world news, you wouldn't know that there's anything else going on other than in your community. And that's where you would focus, and that's where you would try to improve things, is in your local community. So it's a blessing and a curse to know what's going on globally. I don't really think that we are made emotionally, spiritually, physically, in any way to hold as much information as we do about the issues going on globally. And I think that's where a lot of despair and hopelessness comes from, because people are, they're aware of every issue. They're bombarded with every issue. We're not built to hold all that. And all that hopelessness and despair, it's rarely is it about what's right in front of someone. It's about what's going on globally. So I'm both happy to know about what's, going on in the world and to be aware of it and educated about it. And I know that my happiest times are when I'm in the woods and I get to that point where my mind isn't going, where it's just quiet. I'm right where I am, hearing every sound, smelling every smell, seeing every sight right in front of me. Because we're rarely right where we are. Our minds are all over the place, past, future, other places other than where we are. And I love the times when people are just really present, just right there. Like right now, I'm just with you. I'm not thinking about what I was doing before we got together. I'm not thinking about what's going to happen later. Just boom. Like, I'm very aware right now. Technology is giving me this gift of being able to be with you, which is an incredible gift. So I'm just aware of that right now without analyzing much of it too deeply. Just like, boom. Amazing Human is appearing in my screen, which is really, think about that. You know, there's no way. I mean, I remember when color television came around and I was like, whoa, that's it, you know, like that's technology. And, you know, where all of us thought that's about as far as it was going to go. No, but look what we have. This is really incredible, you know. And I can have these really beautiful conversations right now with my 94-year-old parents who are in Florida. You know, so there's gifts to these. None. It's rarely is this stuff like I could say I hate technology and rah, 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 you know, I just want to go to the woods. And this other part of me is very grateful for it, you know, because here we are. That was great. I wish you could freeze right there. A little video of your eyeballs did a full horizon to horizon.
Did they?
Yeah. Hey,
Well,
if folks see this on YouTube or wherever, will they see you and me?
I think they'll see us going back and forth. I think the camera switches, the recording switches whoever is making noise, and it'll go back and forth.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. It's interesting because when you talk about being present in the woods, Noam Chomsky, are you familiar with him?
Totally. Yeah.
So I think part of his belief on language, and also others' belief on the evolution of human language, is that it gave humans the ability to consider the future in a fictional way and to imagine the future in a way that some other animals really, and to communicate about the distant future and to communicate about the distant past. And I watched a video he had a couple days ago, and he was kind of describing, you know, gorillas, if gorillas are trying to explain something to each other, or chimpanzees, and they're trying to explain, you know, this thing is going to happen way over there a couple days from now. They don't have a way to really explain that. Or, you know, I really liked,
How
you
do
know,
we
that
know
thing.
that?
I might be over paraphrasing, but the point I was trying to get to is that the taker philosophy is really a philosophy of created perhaps as an inevitable result of that ability in our language to discuss the future in that way. And when we're present and perfectly present, like in nature, for example, and we're just there, and when we're so present that we're no longer using language, English language, we're no longer thinking and having an internal dialogue, like apparently some people have this continuous internal dialogue, and it's in English, or it's in Mandarin, or in French, or in Bengali, that's when we're really fully present. And that's why, that's one of the things that to a great extent isolates us and makes us into these, it makes us susceptible to being these takers, these owners, these almost non-humans.
You know, one of the tools that I have just in my life is meditation. And I've learned so much about my crazy mind, you know, in meditation. I had never, in my first course, it was a 10-day silent course in Western Massachusetts. And you couldn't make eye contact, no body language, nothing. Just, you had to just be with like this person, this crazy mind. And I had never sat still before, like ever. I'm either going or I'm sleeping. And suddenly I was sitting from 4:30 in the morning till 9 at night. No communication with anyone.
No reading?
No reading, no writing, nothing. Just meditating, just being with yourself holy crap, being with myself, so here I sat down, I thought, I'm not an angry person. If you had asked me before I went into the course, no, I'm a loving person. I'm not an angry person. This was in 1984. It was my first course. And it was an open tent that we sat in because people had come from all over because the teacher was there from India. And, we were just sitting in this open tent and there were mosquitoes, Western Massachusetts summer. And we weren't allowed to kill them. And the anger, I was like, rah. And then we had to bring tents because they didn't have enough housing for everyone. And the zipper broke on my tent. And ants moved in and they were biting me and my arms were all bit up. And so suddenly I was like hate-filled, rah, like the mosquitoes, the ants, the woman who told me about the course, everything, the teacher. Oh, what an idiot, rah. I turned into like freaking Darth Vader. And it was really good for me to witness this. Like, oh, it helped me to better understand people who are angry, to realize, oh, I have that in me too. I'm not this like love fairy, I'm an angry person too. And it was really good for me. And, I got so ornery. And the only time you could speak was at noon. You could write your name on a piece of paper. And you write your name on this piece of paper, and then you can talk to the teacher who had come from India. And his name is Goenkaji. And he's passed away now. But so I write my name on the paper. I'm so freaking angry, Aaron, that I tear the paper as I'm writing. There's my name. And, I tear the paper and I wait behind this other woman who was in front of me. And then I went in and I slammed the door. And I'm going to say fuck a lot right now, but it's just to make it an accurate. So I'm like, I fucking hate you. I say this to the teacher, like this revered guy. I fucking hate you and I fucking hate this place and I have fucking fire in my fucking tent and I can't fucking sleep. Look at my fucking arms are eaten up. And he's just smiling at me. He said, oh, this is good. He said, this is a storm and it will pass. And you'll learn how everything's just temporary. Everything's changing. And I'm like, buddy, this is no fucking storm. Look at my arms. My zipper's broken on my fucking tent. And I'm like, rah, like dragon lady. I'm just crazed. I am crazed. And I know for a fact that later on I found out everybody could hear me in the whole house. Like, they were like, oh my God, who is this? And so he said, one more bed in the house. Move into the house. And I didn't even know he had come from India at the time. I was so dense and clueless about what was going on. And I said, move into the house? Your house? And then I got this big smile. I said, really? He said, oh, storm has passed. And I realized I had no anger right then because I was getting what I wanted. I wanted out of the situation and it had passed. And I said, oh my God. I say to him, it did pass. I said, you were right. I said, I think you're a very good teacher. And there's a lot I could learn. But I don't think I'm ready for this. I'm not built for this. And he laughed so hard. He said, you're built for it. He said, you just keep meditating. You just keep practicing and you'll find out everything's just temporary. Everything's just changing all the time. And so I moved into the house. And but it was really powerful for me because, like, how you have this judgment about people. Like, I was like, oh, those angry people, whether it was people in my family or people in the world or whatever. Oh, those angry people, what's wrong with them? And then here it was, I turned into a freaking Darth Vader. I was like, and but it's just been like one of the best tools because we're all judging all the time, constantly. I'm better than this one. I'm worse than this one, whatever. We're like constantly judging. I'm too old. I'm too fat. I'm too this. She's too old. She's too fat. Whatever. We're just like judgmental. We're always doing this. And then it really toned that so far down in my life, that like constant, analyzing and judging all the time, to just realize, oh, it's just like so many subatomic particles in all these different shapes that are constantly changing. Constantly. And it's it's been so helpful. Like, it's helped me to accept my own impermanence in a big way. It's helped me to accept the virus, you know. So I have my sister, she's like one of the most caring, like her heart is like so big, and she, you know, she doesn't want anybody to suffer. And she called me, she was really upset because you know, and I heard how upset she was. I'm like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she said, Dad went to Costco. And I was like, what? She said, Dad went to Costco. Our 94-year-old dad went to Costco. He put himself in danger. And then we just talked about it. And I said, what is it that upsets you about that? He could get sick. I said, it's guaranteed eventually he's going to get sick. He could die. I said, yep, that's going to happen too. You know, we don't know when. And, you know, so we just had a whole discussion about it, how he may have increased his odds of going sooner. And then we just talked about it, like sooner or later, it's going to be heartache for those who love him. Doesn't matter if it's tomorrow or if it's 10 years from now, it'll be heartache. And that's just life. Like, and then she said like this really sweet thing. She said, but I don't want him to die. And I said, I know. And I said, and death is just part of life. You know, that's it. It's part of life. And so one could take that discussion and say, so then, Rae, why are you against animal agriculture? You know, like suffering's part of life, death is part of life. And so for me, the clear distinction is causing unnecessary suffering. You know, I don't want to be part of causing unnecessary suffering. And because I know what it is to suffer on some level. And I don't want to cause that to anyone else unnecessarily. We're all going to cause suffering, but I don't want to cause it if I don't have to. You know, and I can also thrive without that whole industry. So why do it? I have the luxury to be able to choose too, just saying. You know, I can go to one of my 4 or 5 organic markets that are within 2 miles of my house and get all the best produce you can imagine, and I can grow it in my garden because I have the luxury of knowing how to grow food and having a huge yard with a garden. And you know, it's a lot of luxuries I have.
You know, before civilization and outside of civilization, I don't ever imagine human communities, bands, or tribes causing intentionally other species to suffer. So it feels like it's a feature of this particular story of property, ownership, possession.
It is. I have visitors. Sorry, I got a little distracted there.
No, that's fine.
Canine visitors.
What I've learned about YouTube is that after about an hour, it really is the time for the viewer is like, wow, it's been an hour. How long are they going to keep going? So
you know what I was going to ask you like a half hour ago? Don't you think people are bored by now? Like, oh my God, you think people have an attention span of more than 30 minutes? Whoa.
it really depends, you know. And if this is some way helpful to even just one person, you know, I think I feel okay about that. Well, and I appreciate it for my own self actually as well, because this whole idea that that suffering and selfishness and altruism are interlinked, and that they're all kind of they're non-separable, is something I don't think I'd considered. So I value this conversation for just that reason. But shall we finish up? and say goodbye?
Let's. I have a question for you before we finish up.
Absolutely.
I know so little about you. So are you there in that house with a family?
Yes, I have 2 sons and 1 wife.
Do I know them?
You have probably seen my sons. They were at the Summerfest not a year ago, I think 2 years ago. So when you saw me, when I wasn't like behind a camera or something, anytime I was in the cafeteria having a meal, I would have been with them. And they're, let's see, they would have been 8 years old and 10 years old at the time.
Oh, do you have a photo of them there?
No.
Oh,
I'm not going to put it on YouTube anyway. It's not for YouTube people. If you want to see my photos, come to my Facebook page. I'm talking to the YouTube people.
Oh,
and then ask permission to come into my Facebook. And if I know you, then I'll let you in. But no, privacy on the internet, that's, my wife and I have talked about this many times about, at what point should we make the decision to put the children's pictures on the internet. And so, yeah, I can show you after we stop recording if you like.
Okay, good. Well, it's been sweet spending time with you.
Well, thank you so much, Rae. I really appreciate your time. Every time you give a talk, like at the Summerfest or whatever, I'm always very attentive because you're one of the ones who, just the fact that you're familiar with Daniel Quinn's writings and, a cultural anthropologist background, and, you're one of my heroes for sure.
Oh, what a thing to say. That's very sweet. This massive subatomic particles.
And with that, I'll speak to the viewers. Thank you so much for listening to the two of us prattle on about all these things, freedom and altruism, and suffering and not suffering. If you appreciate content like this, I try to do my very best. I'm not going to always be right. I'm not always going to know the right thing to do, but I'm trying, and I know we're all trying. And to show your appreciation, if you don't mind, if you hit the subscribe, and if you hit ring the bell so you get notifications, and if you put a comment and a like, and if you share it with somebody, that would be great. And I'd love to hear from you if you put something in the comments. So thank you.
Beautiful.
So see you later, Rae. Thank you so much.
I'm hugging you through the screen. Can you see it? Hugging you.
Take care.
Bye, love. Thank you so much.